Hey guys, this is James, and I am joined here at a different location with my good tea friend Garrett.
Hey guys.
Welcome, Garrett.
Yeah.
So we are at Garrett's house right now, and you can see that we are drinking tea with his setup. And I just wanted to show you guys how different people do tea. So is this where you normally drink tea?
Yeah, so I have this set up here on kind of like this dining room desk table thing here. I don't have a tea table. I use like kind of these pie plate objects just to keep things kind of small, contained, and like in one area so I can move it around, because I also use this desk to work on stuff with like my computer and such, but I try to keep my water away from my wiring, and so far so good.
So far so good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And you can see that we just have a Pyrex here instead of a Chahai. Mm-hmm. Probably actually nicer than most Chahais, I'd say.
Yeah. A lot easier. Don't have to fret about it when you like knock it over and you're like, oh, it's just Pyrex. It's cool.
Yeah. And it's really easy to tell how much liquid you have in it because the milliliter calculations are right there on it.
Yeah, you can measure your caffeine intake. Maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And
cool.
So if you wanted to read more about Garrett's setup and stuff like that, he also did an article on TeaDB, 10 things, 10 non-tea things that you can have to sort of like enhance your gong fu / puer setup.
Yep.
So check that out too. You can see a pretty basic setup that's pretty affordable, I think, for most people, but also very functional for gong fu brewing.
Yes. Yeah. So. A lot of different environments and stuff.
So check that article out. And what tea are we having here, Garrett?
So this is the Qizhong from YQH or Yangqing Hao, and I believe this is 2007.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And so we have had one steep so far. I was lucky enough to get a cake of this. And I've had it probably in my storage for about 3 months. I just have like a basic Pomodori setup that's kind of sealed, and I add a little bit of humidity, but it's not all that different than normal like North American like kind of dry humidity.
Yeah. And we'll show you the guys that setup next episode. So you've had this cake for 3 months. You pulled it out just a little bit ago. I was looking at how much you have left. You probably drank through 65-70% of the cake already. So there's only a small amount, like maybe 30% of the cake left. So it's been one that Garrett has drank a fair amount, considering he's only had it for 3 months.
Right. Yeah. So I would say that this cake for me is probably my go-to daily drinker in terms of aged pu'er that isn't Hong Kong or wet stored, stuff that isn't earthy, I should say. So I want something a little fruity, a little bit of that dark fruits. This is what I'll turn to. So I'm just gonna hop in with this next steep here. Get going.
Yep. And so, parameter-wise, what are we using just to let everyone know?
Let everyone know. I'm using 5 grams, and this is about a 75 milliliter gaiwan. So maybe a little higher than some folks.
Yeah. So those are within the standard range of parameters. That's pretty much exactly what I would use for my own setup. And we are using a small little gaiwan, picked up locally as well for a few bucks. And the leaves have just totally opened up all the way after just a couple steeps, it looks like. Yeah,
and I'm getting this like heavy mushroomy nose off of it right now. It smells great. I'm just gonna get another steep in here before we get drinking.
Yep. And this was straight from Yong's storage about 3 months ago. So it is those of you that have tasted his storage know that it's not Hong Kong traditional, not anywhere close to that, but it's also not totally North American dry, so it's somewhere in between those two extremes. Yep. Should we get drinking?
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
So a touch smoky. Definitely a little bit of bitterness on the tip of the tongue. Yeah, but it has a really nice sort of fruit juiciness to it, I think, that I really enjoy with this tea.
Yeah, what fruit do you get from this? Can you place that?
I'm not sure. It's been a while for me. I own a few cakes of this tea as well, and it's actually been quite a while. I don't think I've had this tea in the last 3 months, so you've had probably 30 more sessions than I have. What sort of fruits? That's a good question. They're a little bit dry right now, so maybe sort of in those drier fruit spectrum, like dry apricots, something like that.
Okay.
That's what I would say off the cuff. What about for you?
I'm getting a little bit of persimmon, astringency, dryness from this as well. A little bit of maybe like a date of some sort, like a dark or like a red currant kind of thing going on. It's pretty good, but like not overly, like the sweetness is like combined with that astringency, I think is really balanced for this tea.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep going here.
And this is so far for this tea, is this about what you've gotten in your previous sessions?
I would say so. Yeah, this is a really typical session so far for me in terms of it brewing out in this color, brewing with this kind of thickness in the liqueur and the available kind of taste so far.
And it has really nice back of the mouth sort of sweetness, sort of characteristics of like greater Iwu area. Yeah. And so, yeah, let's keep drinking.
Yeah.
Nice round oiliness. Garrett had commented before the episode on a little bit of smoke in the aroma, and I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Really soft, sort of soft, pillowy mouthfeel when it sort of enters your mouth. So it's interesting that those stronger notes, like the astringency and dryness that Garrett is talking about, pairs with some of these like softer, more smooth notes, I would say.
Right. And I think that's part of the reason why I turn to it so often when I'm just in my kind of day-to-day drinking, is because it offers more complexity than a lot of probably some of the factory teas that I've had from a similar kind of era or time scale, kind of 2007-ish. So it's just more interesting for me to have this tea. I will say, like, we'll probably get to this, but like I do get a little tea drunk off of this. So it's not good to drink before work, I would say.
And this does have pretty good longevity, right?
Yeah, it steeps out.
Yeah. So it has a little bit of energy, as Garrett has commented. And you were saying like other teas that you would drink. What other, because the audience might not be as familiar with you, what other types of teas do you drink? Do you drink like oolongs, green teas? What do you drink?
Sure. So I would say that I probably drink about 70% pu'er, and out of that pu'er, most of it is kind of like a wet stored, like Hong Kong or Taiwan stored tea from the like late 90s. I really like that kind of like earthiness. But apart from that, I also drink occasionally some like boutique-y stuff, kind of like this, boutique Western-facing brands, and a little bit of factory tea, not as much as when I was doing a bunch of sampling about a year or two ago, when I was first getting into like puer. And right now I'm also kind of breaking into aged oolongs. I also really like those for their kind of convenience. They have a lot of similar things to a tea like this that's not heavily stored, but has a fair amount of age on it. I think that if you can find the right aged oolong, it's an interesting place to go to. With your tea drinking habit.
So sort of aged oolongs, Hong Kong traditionally stored puer, and sort of these semi-aged teas are sort of like the three big categories.
Yeah, you got it.
Sounds like. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's drink another steep.
Okay. I'm just going to get this water a little heated here.
You guys might remember Garrett from episodes about a year ago where we were in Taiwan together, so I think that's probably where you sort of got the basis of your stash for puer and for aged oolongs. I think we reviewed a paperless raw back then, and so you've continued to drink those teas, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I've been slowly but surely drinking through everything. I probably have like 20% maybe of everything that we had acquired in Taiwan about a year ago. Still with me. So like pretty heavy drinking.
So if you're looking for a good model for someone that is not hoarding tea but is drinking tea.
Drinking tea, yes.
It's not a tea collector because because the tea is now, a lot of the good tea is now gone.
Yeah.
And Garrett is a better model than myself, for sure. No doubt about that. There are no questions with that. I've had my Qizhong cake for, and I also quite like my Qizhong cake for probably a year and a half now, and I am almost halfway there. So Garrett in the past 3 months has surpassed my overall consumption of that tea. So so if that says anything about that. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. I'm getting kind of like a chocolatey smoothness, maybe like cacao, yeah.
So maybe moving into some of those darker notes. I've heard a couple people, when commenting about this tea, talk about it sort of having a few different phases. Like the initial phase is sort of stronger. There's more of that drying astringency, which I also get from this infusion. Do you notice different phases as you're sort of like steeping this out over the course of a session?
Yeah, so initially I noticed there's kind of this smoky astringency combined with fruits in the first few steeps, and I think we're moving away from that now. And I think now we're moving into kind of more of a maybe more savory tones. Like I said, like kind of chocolate, but dark chocolate, not like a sweet sort of candy. More of that sensation you get when you're eating a really good chocolate bar and it just kind of fills the space in your mouth. That also being said, it has pretty good huigan.
The aftertaste really lasts. I mean, I talk about sort of that drying astringency, but it really does coat the mouth, and it's making me salivate quite a bit right now. So, so I think it's a pretty high quality tea. I enjoy it for myself. It also seems like, to me at least, a tea with the potential to age for longer. Hard to say, but like some of that dryness and stuff, that astringency, you'd hope that would sort of smooth out over time.
Right, and it would be an extremely interesting tea if you could get rid of maybe a little bit of that smoke in the first little bit.
Right, and stuff like that will take some time, especially in sort of these drier climates that I think a lot of us that live in the West live in. So do you tend to like that initial phase more, that's a little bit stronger, punchier, a little bit more astringent, or do you like that sort of second phase where it's moving, maybe getting a little bit more into those dark fruits, those cocoa, smoother flavors?
I'm more apt for the smoother flavors, I think. The tea, I would say is kind of, I think it really comes into its own in the later steeps. Like initially it's like, this is a good tea, reminds me a lot of things that I've had before, but it's when in these like later steeps, maybe like 7 onwards, where it starts to really kind of come into its own, I guess. Yeah.
I think I would also agree with you. Sometimes for me, there's a little bit of session to session variability for this tea, but it could be a bit strong, I think, for some people early on. And I think that's turned some people off to this tea. But if you keep going with it, it really becomes quite pleasant, I think.
Yeah. Cheers.
So I think it is starting to, that astringency, it's still there, but a lot more mild than it was.
And this steep I did for a pretty long time, I would say comparative to the first few steeps.
Yeah. Let's take a quick smell.
Okay.
The fruitiness, especially, is in the aroma of this tea, I would say.
Sure. Yeah. Get kind of like a prune or like a maybe like I can't really place it. Yeah, it's super dark though.
Like sort of currants and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we wrap up on this final steep right here that we are doing, because we're getting into that sort of really tasty second phase.
Yes. I'm getting a little bit, buzzed.
Yeah, and this is also the first tea that we've had, just so you guys know. We weren't pre-gaming or pre-funking this session. I don't know if people still use that term. I've been at college for many years now. So, but, so this is the energy from this tea is, yeah. All right. Cheers, sir.
Cheers.
Yeah, I'd say darker notes. Maybe a little bit of leather in this one.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of... Yeah, I would say like those leather, maybe tobacco-y notes.
Maybe like even some like really robust floral notes too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, thank you, Garrett, for appearing.
Yeah.
Where can someone find out your Instagram or something like that? Can people follow your tea journey?
My tea journey. So I have an Instagram account. You can find me at islikewater, all one word. And that is where I try to document a lot of my tea going ons, especially when I get new stuff in my collection. I'll post it there.
Yep, and you can also look out for Garrett next episode. We are going to be looking at his storage. I think it's always really interesting to look at how different people are storing their pu'er tea in the West. A lot of us have very makeshift setups. So, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Cheers.